Alright, so a few months back I did a review of sorts on the H-1Z's Hellfire missiles. They were trash for many reasons. But jump to present day and the Hellfire missiles are actually a lot better. And by a lot better, I mean that they're probably the best anti-tank missiles in the game. Here's why. First of all, a quick recap on why the Hellfires were complete trash. Number one, the Hellfire's 8km range was essentially cut to 5km at the most due to the sketchy as fuck object rendering system, as in tanks would be invisible beyond about 5km. Secondly, even if something was within render distance, there was no guarantee you would actually spot it, especially if it wasn't moving and was concealed near bushes or trees. And lastly, the missiles were near uncontrollable while either you or your target were moving. That last part is actually worth digging into because it just so happens to be one of the reasons why Hellfires are so great now. So, the Hellfires use this thing called proportional navigation as a guidance algorithm. It's used on pretty much all IR guided air-to-air missiles, and it's what causes the missiles to lead their targets. That's the long and short of it. If you want more details, just, I don't know, Google it or something. Anyways, this proportional navigation works fine if your mouse movements are smoother than something really smooth. But most people aren't that smooth, so the missile's guidance interprets all the little jitters in your mouse aim as the target accelerating in whichever direction, throwing it off target just before impact. However, with 1.93 we don't have to worry about jittery aim. Instead, you can just lock onto people. In fact, not only can you lock onto people, but you can also switch out of gun of view and fly perpendicular to the target at 300 km per hour. And the missile will still hit it dead on, provided that you or your target don't make any sudden changes in direction. As for the other two issues, the render distance problem seems to have just gone away since you can now spot enemy helicopters from over 10 km away as they take off from their own airfields. Meanwhile, thermal sights make it very easy to spot tanks, helicopters, and aircraft. In other words, you can do stuff like this. Which is very nice. Take note that a stock Tunguska's range is also about 8 km. However, this isn't the only reason why the Hellfire is the best anti-armor missile. In fact, I've already covered the Hellfire's special ability at the start of this video. And yes, being able to launch multiple missiles at once is very helpful. Currently, ATGMs do pretty piss poor damage. I guess it depends a lot on what you're shooting at, but when it comes to NATO MBTs, you need to double, triple, or even fucking quadruple tap those damn things. Seriously, they just don't die sometimes. And if you're using something like, well, literally any other type of ATGM, you can only fire one at a time. If you're hovering at a sensible distance of at least 4,000 meters, each ATGM is going to take about 20 seconds before it reaches its target. Multiply that by how many missiles you need to ram in between some leopard's arse cheeks, and that's about a full minute of launching missiles at a single enemy. It should go without saying that a lot can happen in 60 seconds. Another helicopter could spawn in, or a plane, or an SPA with SAMs. Basically, minimizing your time to kill is absolutely essential. Not just for staying alive, but for actually being useful in the match. Entire teams can disintegrate over the course of a minute, and if you can't rack up kills quickly, then you're probably better off in a tank. And that's why being able to ripple fire 3 missiles can reduce your hypothetical time to kill from 60 seconds down to, say, 15 seconds. Also, if you ripple fire at roughly 10-second intervals, it allows you to queue up missiles, so to speak, thereby allowing you to switch to a new target using missiles that are already halfway there. So, those are pretty much all the positives. Does this mean that something like the Viper is broken OP like it used to be? Hell no, it's still borderline irrelevant, and that goes for pretty much every helicopter, actually. First of all, there's the threat of enemy aircraft and helicopters. In something like the Lynx, Tiger, or Viper, you certainly aren't defenseless. All of these helicopters have access to air-to-air missiles and flares. However, the main issue is in seeing an enemy coming in the first place. If you're laser focused killing things on the ground, you won't see anything in the sky. And I gotta say that the Ka-50 is the most annoying in this regard. Its Vika missiles reach out to 10 kilometers, have a 4 meter proximity fuse against air targets, and because they're not IR guided, you don't get a launch warning. So unfortunately, Hellfires don't work nearly as well on aerial targets as they do on ground targets, mostly due to lag. So basically, unless you can sneak up on one of those things from 2 kilometers and fire off an AIM-9L, you're fucking dead, kiddo. The second and most important issue is, broadly speaking, people being able to respawn in an SPA. I'll put it like this. Let's say there's a trio of Tunguskas that spawn in at the start of the match. You're an epic gamer, so by some miracle, you manage to kill all 3 of these Tunguskas within about 2 minutes of the match starting. Hooray! However, from 8 kilometers away, it took a grand total of 35 seconds for each missile to reach its target. It was simple enough with the Tunguskas because they had the collective IQ of a blobfish and just sat there flicking missiles at you. Actual enemy players in T-80s and Leopard 2s, however, tend to move around. And on the large majority of maps, there are buildings and trees and terrain that these players can move between. This is another issue I covered in my previous Hellfire video, and it's more of an issue with helicopter gameplay in general. The fact is, if you stay 8 kilometers away from the battlefield and wait 35 seconds for your orbital missile barrage to reach its target, it's highly likely that the target will have moved somewhere else and, in the process, broken your lock with a tree, your wall, or whatever. Of course, you could move closer to about 4 kilometers, where the missile will reach its target in about half the time. But, uh-oh.
Stinky!
Oh, shit! Yo, tell me what this...
A Tunguska just spawned in, and there's pretty much nothing you can do to stop a Mark II missile from slamming into your forehead. You could try flying lower, as in treetop level, which would help in dodging the SAMs, but of course this maximizes the amount of trees and buildings and stuff between you and your target. So it's extremely unlikely that you'll have a line of sight on anything besides the odd T-80 that decided to camp behind your team's spawn point. As a side note, this is why helicopters were so powerful prior to the introduction of SAMs. They were free to hover almost directly over the battlefield and delete everything with impunity. Being able to fire down on people meant that there were very few places you could actually hide from an enemy helicopter. But now, the opposite is true. Unless you really want to roll those dice, and sit right above where a Tunguska or Roland or Automatic might spawn, you have to stay very low or very far away. There are some notable exceptions to this rule in the Italy, Middle East, and Sands of Sinai maps, where you can take advantage of the mountain ranges and position yourself above the battlefield while still making use of terrain masking. Most maps, however, are not as helicopter friendly and will offer you nothing but treetops to hide behind. Anyways, the bottom line is that Ka-50s and planes will fuck you over if you don't constantly check where they are, and there isn't any counterplay to someone who can just suddenly and unexpectedly respawn in a vehicle that's optimized for annihilating helicopters. You have to compromise your ability to be useful in the match or risk getting smoked. Or you can just play simulator battles. Anyways, that's pretty much all I wanted to say on the subject. I was and still am working on an F4 Phantom video, but it's not quite as good as I want it to be right now, and at the moment it's partly turning into a generic kill montage kind of thing. So I'll be spending some more time improving that video. In future I possibly might do a technical kind of video on how AIM missiles work in War Thunder, but I want to wait at least until 1.95 drops, just in case there's any important changes. Okay, bye.